That's right. Greetings, fellow Vikings. Tiki here.
And Rohith.
And tonight we are here to talk about bottoms. That's right. It's a spoiler cast for Rohit. I'm just going to come out and say it. I didn't really know what to expect from this movie outside of the fact that I really liked Rachel Sennett from or Senat. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I'm sorry. From Bodies, Bodies, Bodies last year. So I was excited to see kind of like a follow up performance from her.
I just watched that movie yesterday.
Oh, nice. This is my favorite movie of 2023, Rohit.
Really?
This is my number one. And I can confirm that because I just got done rewatching it, seeing it in theaters a second time today. Mm-hmm. The time just flew by, man. It was like it literally felt like a 30-minute short film in a good way, in a way of like, oh my god, I am just enjoying this so much. I'm not even thinking about the fact that I'm watching a movie.
Sure.
And I'm definitely going to see it a third time because I have a friend of mine who would just absolutely like this, absolutely love it. Mm. So, yeah, we're here to talk about bottoms. That line is very odd taking. Yeah, it's a weird title. It's an awkward title. But you know what? It's an awkward movie in the best of ways. So you're actually the one to bring it to my attention, Rohit. So first of all, I want to know kind of like what put this movie on your radar and then kind of your overall thesis on it.
Sure, absolutely. I was made aware of this film because me and a friend of mine, he has a season pass through Alamo Drafthouse, and for those of you that are not in the know, Alamo Drafthouse is a very swanky theater chain. Oh, not swanky. It's a little like upscale theater chain that has like a really wide variety of foods, and like basically the appeal of it is that you go in. They're very strict about noise, and they have waiters coming in and out to take your orders and stuff like that. And what's cool about when going to a movie now at Drafthouse is that you beforehand, like if you come in 30 minutes before your showtime, you get to see archival footage or footage of like films if that matches the theme aesthetic of the film you're going to see the showtime for. But for Bottoms, I just saw like the trailer for it often for a lot because. For me and my friend, I think we've now, including this, we watched like at least 30 movies so far this year. And this trailer was playing so often. And it was like, oh, this is a really cool movie I want to watch. And Ayu Idibiri, one of the two leads, I just got to watch her, I think about a month ago or so, or a few weeks ago, in another movie called Theater Camp. If you've heard of this, or you've heard of that movie.
I have seen it. Yeah, she doesn't have that big of a role in it, but she is very funny in it.
Yeah, and for the trailer for it was really funny, and you just like the premise of it, and I felt like, oh, this is kind of my sensibilities and sense of like I really appreciate all like raunchy juvenile humor. Like I think probably my favorite comedy of all time is Superbad. So this being in a high school environment, and the premise is like, all right, we're gonna start up a fight club under the pretense of female empowerment, but really want to just like hook up with cheerleaders. It's like, okay, this is going to be really fun. And Rachel Sennott, I actually saw her before Bottoms. I saw her in, I think probably her big like breakout role, quote unquote, was in a movie called Shiva Baby.
Have you heard I need to see that movie. It's done by the same director.
Emma Seligman?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Man, I'll tell you this: Shiva Baby is very anxiety inducing, which is when you watch the movie, you'll understand what I mean.
And so I hear it's done in real time.
I believe it is, yes. And I think coming to this is like, okay, this is going to be very interesting. Premise for a movie. The trailer looked really interesting, and Marshawn Lynch is like the parts that I saw in the trailer was like, oh, he's going to be really stand out. And watching this movie coming out of it, it's I don't think it's my favorite film. It's definitely one of my favorites. I think I can easily put this in the top 5, if not top 10. It's my second favorite comedy after Barbie. I can definitely understand why you like this a lot, Tiki. And I think, but part of what makes this movie special is that it is very much a film of like the current generation being Zoomers. The idioms, the sort of styles, the themes, and just sort of the overall like ideas that are expressed in this movie is very contemporary for this time. And I feel like just as people of our, at least in our age group, really latched onto Mean Girls as like the movie that was representative.
This is absolutely the Zoomer Mean Girls. It 1000% is going to be that.
And I bet you once this movie gets out on DVD digital, it will become a viral hit. Like I can see so many people making TikToks of certain scenes of this movie. And I think what it really comes down to it is that there is a sense of, there is just like a very like no holds barred sense of humor. And I think I'm going to bring up the one moment that like won me over the movie. I'm going to talk about it later on, but once I saw, I was like, oh, this movie knows what it's doing. It's a very social satirical. It's got like it's like its approach to violence is rightfully brutal, but also brutal, but also funny in the way it does violence, right? Like the way it straddles that line, you never find yourself feel like, oh, this is just too much. But at the same time, it can get too much, but you can kind of like laugh too because it's really funny and over the top, and also to relieve the tension because it's kind of brutal in a way. And just the overall performances, I think there's sort of like I appreciate that for this movie when it does have the moments of sincerity, of drama, of like character development, character growth, and for the main leads to go on their arc, it's never done in a way in which the drama or like the real world dynamics of the film takes away or diminishes the absurdity or the like satire of it. Because I think sometimes a lot of comedies nowadays will often, when they have the dramatic sincerity moments, it kind of just like puts the film at a halt in terms of pace.
Abso-freaking-lutely. I feel like that was definitely the problem with what was the movie? It's not Girls Trip, but I want to say Girls Trip. The one with the
or is it the Asian one?
Yes.
I like that one, and I can sort of see. I don't know.
Like for me, when it tried to go the heartfelt route in the third act, like I love Daniel Day Kim, so that's the only thing that made that stuff actually work for me. But if it wasn't for just like, yay, it's Jin from Lost, I like that guy. I feel like that third act would be like, because that movie is like, I feel like that movie is just as aggressive about the vulgarity as Bottoms is. It's just not nearly as smart about it.
Sure. I think a film that comes to mind in terms of the balancing of like where like the drama comedy ratio is not as balanced as like the J-Lo movie No Strings Attached. Have you saw that one?
That is I actually have not seen it specifically because that's the thing I keep hearing about it. And let me tell you something, man. Comedies that don't get their tones right drive me freaking crazy.
Yeah, because the thing is, when you think back to like my favorite comedy, Superbad, the way the movie ends, it ends on a kind of like sad note. But but I can still revisit the movie and just laugh all the way through. And I think that's something that I don't know. I've noticed that for
I mean, look at like going way back as far as teen comedies go. Look at something like American Graffiti. Dragon and I just revisited that recently, and it's like that movie is whole and whole. It's just a very entertaining, wholesome, like, movie, but then it literally like slaps you over the face and like splashes cold water on you at the end with like, like revealing that several characters are not in a good spot and one of them is even dead. So I like that kind of balancing act. Don't get me wrong. I feel like when you can do it and when it's done well, like for example, something like compare like the first couple Judd Apatow movies, like Knocked Up and 40-Year-Old Virgin. I feel like those two movies did it well. And then pretty much every other Judd Apatow movie after that just tried to lean more and more into the sentimental side of things, to now I don't even really think he makes comedies.
Or even just films that are kind of like, if not marketed as like Judd Apatow's movies, like I mean, this is 40s a Judd Apatow movie, but I'm thinking like movies like Trainwreck that.
Right, yeah.
Like the issues, like for those kind of movies, like they're really funny and raunchy in the marketing and the trailers. When I'm watching it, there'll be like those sequences, and there may be a few more that were in the marketing and trailers, and then there's just long stretches of movies where there's dramatic stuff, and the drama isn't as like compelling or well written or just engaging as the comedy is. You're just kind of it's just kind of like how in an anime where like if there's an anime that has like really good fight sequences and there'll be just boring dramatic scenes in between, so you just kind of have to like skim through or just like wait it out.
Right.
And I think not to say like comedies can't have good drama, it has to be done well, and B, it doesn't overpower the comedy. I think for me in say shows, I can appreciate or be more willing for comedies to go a little bit more dramatic because sometimes there's I feel like TV writers have a better balance or have more room to kind of go into those different like tonal whiplashes in the course of a season or the course of even one episode.
All right, well, we're kind of turning this more into a deconstruction of the genre, so let's focus back on this. I want to talk some comments over. First of all, welcome to Richard's Victims. Yeah, it's very much Fight Club plus Mean Girls, but you know what? I want to say it's like this movie very much takes inspiration from Fight Club, very much takes inspiration from Mean Girls. I've been hearing a lot of people saying like, oh, it's just super bad, but with the genders reversed. I'm like, I mean, kind of, in the fact that it's like the main characters are kind of like, out to break their virginity before college, sure. But everything about this movie is like it's kind of taking bits and pieces of everything. And then Rohit, the word that you used to sell me on this movie was heightened. And that is exactly what this movie feels like, and that's what we're going to get into. Okay. Hi, Tiki. Just stopping by to let you know some information. By the time you read this comment, I'll immediately send it. Okay. What information, Lucas? I'm all ears. All right. Let's see. Rohit also says making a good comedy is harder than making a good drama in a lot of ways. Yeah, every idea has been done. It's all about finding a cool way to do it. And this movie absolutely does that. And I want to address Kogias here. This film topped Asteroid City as your favorite film of the year. I love Asteroid City. I really do. And honestly, probably objectively, like from a sheer cinematic filmmaking standpoint, Asteroid City is still probably better because that movie is just all over the place doing so many things with the cinematography and the aspect ratios and everything. Here's the thing, though. I can't really recommend Asteroid City to anyone who's not already like a Wes Anderson fanboy. Like I am a Wes Anderson fanboy, and so therefore I got a ton out of it. But Asteroid City is very much not an entry-level movie. And so for that reason, I kind of feel like Bottoms more appeals to me when I'm trying to choose like a number one movie of the year. I'm really trying to choose something that not just speaks to me personally, but I feel like also has like a wider cultural impact. And as much as I love Asteroid City, and I do think that over time people are going to really look at it as one of Wes Anderson's masterpieces, it's not very entry level. It's not very accessible. This movie isn't necessarily the most accessible thing in the world either, with the heightened violence and everything and the crass language. I mean, it's, I certainly wouldn't recommend this movie to the grandparents in the audience, but, I definitely think it's a movie for a lot of people. Like, I am fully in the millennial camp, but so usually when movies try to lean into the Zoomer humor of it all, I don't really attach to it. I liked Bodies, Bodies, Bodies a lot. I didn't love it. I feel like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies was maybe a little bit too self-aware. Rachel Sennott was obviously the big standout of that movie. This is like, I mean, I don't know. I really love it.
I think what makes this movie work is that I think for the kind of characters that are in this kind of movie, a lesser director would maybe pull their punches and not show sort of the maybe more uglier and unsavory parts of these characters.
Uh-huh.
Because with the premise, if you just step back and think of it, if
this premise was flipped on its head and it was guys doing this, this movie would not exist.
Well, if it would exist, it'd be kind of like a Darren Aronofsky, David Fincher kind of.
Sure, yeah.
You guys are like very disturbed or just like but I think what I appreciate about this is that for this premise, because we think about it, it's like, okay, regardless of the gender, I feel like if you were in high school and heard this premise, it's like, okay, these people are just, there's a reason why these people don't have any friends. And it's not because they're
the thing is, this movie leans into that, though. I mean, it's like, I almost kind of feel like even the happy endings that the characters do get at the end are kind of like very much played as like tongue-in-cheek, like, well, shit, this is what's supposed to happen at the end of these movies, so we're doing it. Like, I honestly feel like the happy endings are kind of like intentionally not earned. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Like, as in that, like, because of the heightened reality, they would go to those endings. But
right, exactly. I mean, there's a lot about the ending. Honestly, the last fucking 10 minutes of this movie is very much enough to warrant a spoiler cast. Like, to the point where I will warn people, like, if you're in the live chat and you haven't seen this movie, like, by all means, we can probably talk about most of it and not really, give away major elements, but like, you're going to want to leave once we talk about the actual ending. I do not want to give away the actual ending of this movie to you guys. It is fucking wild.
Okay, so I think so let's start. For me, you know what really won me over on the movie when watching it for the first time? The banner. It's like, football is all we need because it's all we have. And it's like, okay, this movie is on fire. This movie knows what it's doing. It's got a point, and it's just like, trains are leaving the station. We're on a roll, man. It's like, okay, and then you just hear, you get to see Rachel Sanaa and Idris characters, and just the way they like try to like act cool or interact with like the popular cheerleaders is just so on point. Because
it's so awkward and like realistically awkward.
Yeah, and like it's the attire they have, like the way that they kind of like mumble over their words and don't project as well. It's like, this isn't like Hollywood awkward. This is like real world awkward.
It's not like Sheldon fucking Cooper,
or even just like I think for Hollywood, we'll have like a certain idea of like an awkward girl where it's like, they're like kind of, they giggle, it's like, and they're like,
right, yeah.
Like, if you were to interact with these girls, like the average person would just kind of like wait a few seconds of dead air and then just leave. And that's perfect, because then at that point, you feel for these girls, but B, you can understand why other people don't hang out with them as often.
It's such a balancing act, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because here's the thing. I feel like Josie is very much like the protagonist of the two of them. And, God, I'm sorry. I'm blanking on Rachel Senna's character's name. Do you remember?
Hold on. I could just pull up the...
I got it. PJ. That's right.
Yeah.
I feel like PJ is kind of like she remain, like, I feel like both of them are at fault for certain things. Like, for example, Josie very much kind of like instigates the lie. You know what I mean? Like, she very much is the one who really pushes the lie that we'll get into. But PJ, just through and through, her behavior is straight up like problematic. And like I said, I really don't think that anything towards the end of the movie changes any of that. Like, she is just inherently kind of a shitty person with a shitty attitude.
I think when people bring up the Superbad comparison, like, clearly, like, I think first off, when people say like, this is Superbad but with girls, like, Booksmart is Superbad but with girls. And that's pretty spot on, because I really like Booksmart, but Booksmart feels pretty surface level compared to this. Yeah, and I think part of it is that the Booksmart. When I rewatch it, it's like, oh, like this. It's like it's like the one movie where there's dramatic parts to it, slightly mess the ratio, but it's kind of like the best version of those kind of comedy movies that has a little bit too much drama, if that makes sense. Um, whereas this, it's like, oh, this is an outright comedy from beginning to end. And I think what really makes this funny is just uh, what it's just like the whole lie is like, oh yeah, we went to juvie, and it's just like,
well, first of all, I feel like just again, the word of the day is very much heightened.
Yeah,
and so I feel like just everyone's reaction to the whole them going to juvie thing is very heightened. Just the whole it almost becomes like a tall tale.
Yeah, because when you think about it, you just look how they act and just kind of dress. It's like, yeah, do they really look like the kind of people that would go to juvie in the first place?
Oh man.
But I guess maybe part of the satires of on Emma Seligman, the director's part, is like, well, it could for this generation, they probably are of the mindset. It's like, well, looks aren't everything. It could be the case that oh, the quiet nerdy kid has can be willing to fight or something like that. Because I feel like that'd be kind of, I've noticed sometimes for in Zoomer culture, certain cultural narratives about the quiet kid or the nerdy kid is deep down can tussle, push to a certain end, and maybe that's kind of the thing that Seligman's playing on a heightened version
of. I mean, like you said though, just the world in itself. Let's break that down. Just the fact that this high school is literally it's the scene from Mean Girls where Caddy's describing the mall as wild animals. It's literally like that, but the whole movie basically. Oh, yeah. I'm with you. I love all the football propaganda throughout the movie.
Yeah, I really wonder if because I'm looking, because for Emma Seligman, she grew up she grew up in Toronto, Canada. So it is, and I think for the writer of this movie, she was co-written by Rachel Sennott and Emma Seligman, and she grew up in Connecticut. So I don't know if maybe just for them they witnessed a football background, or they specifically just knew people that grew up for football. But it very much feels like, oh, this is very much they gathered experiences of closeted girls who grew up in very small towns in America that just where football is everything and nothing else.
Totally. It's almost like a parody of Friday Night Lights.
Oh man, I watched Friday Night Lights the first time probably last year. It's one of my favorite shows, but yeah, it's definitely it takes probably the side character that's quote unquote the outside the norm, and all right, let's make them the central character, and football people is just a freaking clown show.
All right, Lucas Green, by all means, I don't know exactly how you can get a hold of me because I'm not really on Twitter anymore. Rohit, do you know if people can post stuff to the community tab?
I don't believe so. Do you know what Lucas had mentioned to you?
Yeah, he's mentioning that he has he made Lego in a Lego game. He's made Dragon and I as minifigures. Lucas, I'm going to go ahead and give you the channel email, and if you want to send me screenshots or video or whatever, I'd be happy to check it out. So go ahead and send that my way if you want.
I appreciated that for PJ and Josie's they're I think within as they're interacting with the cheerleaders, there's the one other friend who PJ especially just groans, and I kind of where I think the Superbad kind of comparisons come in. It's I'm trying to think of the other friend's name.
Oh shoot, Hazel.
Yes, Hazel is kind of like the McLovin of the Trinity.
Yeah,
Like,
a little bit, but I mean, she's definitely. I feel like she's probably honestly the most grounded character in the whole movie.
Yeah, but I think in terms of the surface level, it's like you have the two main friends. One is a little bit more reserved and not wanting to like push the envelope, whereas the other,
Sure.
And then there's
the other is like very, very outspoken.
Yeah. And then there's the one other, and then there's the one friend who interacts with the other two that a more outspoken friend just heavily dislikes.
Right, I can see that.
But,
yeah.
No, what I appreciate about it was that when Hazel comes in, like she's just a really like for all intents and purposes in every other movie, she would have been just like the nice friend that like you root for and all that. But just the fact that like just coming,
she's like essential to the plot.
Yeah. And what's interesting is just kind of like as she's coming in and interacting with like PJ and Josie, like just the initial lie that like is permeated, then it's kind of like goes back to earth and it's like, oh yeah, we're just like nerdy like loser girls that like hang out with one other nerdy loser girl.
Yeah, you can really feel the on a rewatch, you can really feel the tension with Hazel when she's because the thing with Hazel as a character is that she is the one who definitely gets the most emotionally invested in the club, and so you can really feel like she wants the club to go on, so she doesn't want to give away the fact that they're lying about the juvie thing. But it's very much, like emotionally at conflict with her, and it's a really interesting dynamic that they pull with that, where it's like I'm sure the girls, like the main characters, really aren't even really thinking about the fact that Hazel also knows that they went to juvie or that they didn't go to juvie.
Yeah, and I think what I love about after that scene is that they get into their car, but they see a fight with Jeff and Isabel, and Jeff, the way he acts, and just the rest of the football team, it's very much like, okay, take like the one aspect that's like super hyper masculine, which is American football and especially American high school football, and just try to make it so and try to like add a tinge of homoeroticism and like flamboyancy in it, and especially when like Isabel gets in the car and with PJ and Josie and just a light tap on the knees of Jeff, he just falls down, and
the physical comedy in that moment is just so good.
I love Jeff's friend, the football friend that comes in with the other football players.
I think he's one of the strongest performances in the movie.
Yeah, he kind of gives me like a bit of the vibes of who from Kingsley Ben-Adir's character in Barbie, like
a little bit. If that character was more sinister,
he's very much matching the vibe and energy of this movie, and just the way he cradles Jeff as
and like
lover, and just like puts his arms like, why was this happening?
Really quick though, I want to double back to the monologue that Josie does right before that scene happens. The whole please visit me on Sundays. That to me, I like they put that clip up on YouTube, and I think for good reason. I honestly think it might be the biggest laugh in the whole movie for me. Just that whole monologue, that whole rant, which basically feels 100% improvised. And we're going to have a son, Hezekiah, who hates us because he knows we're both closeted, and we try to make it work, but he knows. And my husband's going to give good sermons, but everyone will know he's fruity. Everyone knows he's fucking fruity.
And
I feel like that's going to be the scene that gets quoted.
My favorite part of the monologue is like, and he gets to have gay sex with the altar boy, and I'm just
God. also the principal only gets 2 scenes, like not even really, because he's in the finale, but he doesn't really have any standout moments in the finale. But the one scene he does have, I love the performance, because you literally, like, he is like literally like red in the face from anger about just the fact that these 2 girls would like dare to mess up the star quarterback.
Did you not get, like, I don't know, this is maybe like me reading to things. Did you not get like a Hitler vibe from the way his hair was styled or whatnot? Or,
maybe a little bit. I could see that.
I don't know if you're just like, oh, he just didn't do his hair well.
I don't necessarily know if that's what they were going for, but I mean, if it is, I could definitely see the symbolism there with, just with the way that the school is run and the fact that it's literally like a very literal shithole.
Yeah. No, and Marshawn Lynch as Mr. G is just a delight.
Absolute standout. I really hope this is the start of I am not a sports guy, so I had no idea who he was before this. But I really hope this is like the start of a comedy career for him, because he's just really natural at it.
Oh my god, the one guy, it's like, all right, we're like, it's like, yeah, I don't know if it was in the beginning or it was later on, but it's like, yes, Kyle, whoever, it's like the Holocaust did happen.
I also love how even that kid, I think he's literally just listed in the credits as emo kid.
Yeah.
And even he has like a couple standout moments. He literally has like less than a minute of screen time. And that's what I'm talking about. That right there, I think, is why I love this movie as much as I do. Because it is just every single person that is on screen stands out, has screen presence, is electric. I mean, honestly, I felt that way even more so the second time I saw it. So, for example, the first time I saw this movie, I honestly thought the 2 love interests that the lead characters are going after were sort of like 2 of the more, not boring characters, but kind of like, they're on surface level, they're more normal.
Yeah.
But really, they are quite eccentric when you really study the performances, especially the actress playing Isabel. I think she's got some really quirky mannerisms to her. And then just the Brittany, PJ's love interest. I really just love the way that she kind of just like flip-flops back and forth on her loyalties and is just very flippant and just obviously. Go ahead.
I bet I can very much tell that both Emma Seligman and Rachel Sennott watched a lot of like teen movies, because especially Brittany's character, the fact that she's openly aware, is like, oh, like I'm just kind of tied my loyalties to like Isabel.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's very much just like, okay, they definitely have done their homework and observed the trope of like, oh, here's the one popular girl and then the friend that's just kind of at her side and not really have much of a character. And in this movie, she's given a lot of character and a lot of like her personality. What I really love is when they start the like feminist self-defense class, the people that come in that to the club, like PJ and Joseph's like, oh, we're gonna get really hot girls, and and just like the white,
all these girls are 6s, 7s at best.
That was like, oh my god.
Like I said, it's not like PJ's attitude changes at all through the movie. I mean, she stays in that sort of like toxic, like there's really not a character arc for her. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't think it's unintentional.
Yeah, I think what it's like, it's kind of like the term, I think, I don't know if this may be my place to say it, but it's like there's kind of the term or the archetype, and it's like there's like the mean gay, and like PJ's definitely the mean gay person. Who's like,
exactly.
One line that like personifies PJ's character to a T. It's like, I was like PJ and Joseph are having their dialogue in like the benches. And PJ's like, oh, well, I'm such a feminist, and Joseph's like, no, you're not. Your favorite show is Entourage.
I haven't watched Entourage, so I didn't like fully get that joke.
I watched Entourage. I generally do like the show, but it is very much not Not in.
I kind of feel like in the modern day, the show to go to for that kind of reference would be something like Succession. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there a joke in a movie recently where one of the characters' favorite shows was Succession? I feel like the movie we were talking about, and again, I don't want to just refer to it as like the Asian girl trip movie, but that movie,
it's
Joyride, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure because that movie has the character who's more tied to her cultural heritage, and then the character that was adopted, and so therefore very Americanized.
She's so white. Her cultural references are like
our Succession. Yeah.
No, and actually, funny enough, like this week's episode of Harley Quinn made like a Succession reference. So
that's funny. I guess, come to think of it, now that I think about it, Succession actually does have, like, on surface level, it's a very testosterone-driven show, but like, there's definitely a lot of characters kind of in the background, like really pulling the strings that are female. So that's not necessarily the best example. Anyways.
Yeah, I feel like for like a show that's like very guy centric, I think recent in modern days would be probably shows like trying to think if it's like
fucking Rick and Morty.
No, because I'm thinking of like very like traditional macho man stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like something that's like a Sons of Anarchy or like
Walking Dead, maybe.
Yeah, Walking Dead. I'm just thinking it's like there hasn't been a show that's like really super macho masculine, toxic masculinity stuff since like The Shield. I feel like for like modern cable TV that has like anti-heroes, it's not as virulently like hyper masculine as shows of that nature were in like the 2000s or 90s. I also think I'm trying to think. It's like what Spartacus. That's like a super ultra violent action show, but that's besides the point. I just love that when we get in, you see the girls, the girls that are joining the Fight Club. There's that one character who's kind of like a bit of a tweaker, or just someone.
Okay, that character, I want to talk about her because, like, she was a standout for me the first time I saw it, and the audience wasn't really reacting to her that much. The second time I saw it, I was in a theater that had a more full audience, and let me tell you, Rohith, I could tell from the audience reaction, she was like the character that the audience was like latching onto. Like literally every time she did anything, the audience just exploded. I love that. Because she's really not that major of a character, but she's just got such a screen presence to her.
Yeah, and the demonstration, like for like PJ's character, right? Like when she gets like punched and her nose starts bleeding, I just laughed at how like basically both PJ and Josie are sort of clueless. But just the kind of the way that they act so super confident, even after getting physically assaulted, was just really funny. And then just the montage of the girls just like fighting and and growing attached to one another. It's like, oh, this is like the part where it's not like for I would have thought like for maybe because of how heightened the movie is. Maybe the girls would have just been naturally good at fighting, but I do like kind of the part. I do like that this part was kind of relatively grounded, because that just adds to sort of the level of comedy. Because you see PJ and Josie, and like as they're teaching, they're just kind of like flailing about because they're not like expert fighters, so they don't know how to like do like actual proper training or like fighting stances. They're just kind of like, all right, hold your hands up and just like, kind of move it about, and then and all of it's just and they're not really like good at punching. They're just good at kind of dodging and then just landing a punch or two. But that whole sequence was just hilarious, especially as like they have Mr. G as the advisor, and he's just like and the way to get him is like, oh, he's just going through a divorce, and maybe there's a chance to kind of like get his mind off of it or whatnot.
But I love how it's like at the start they're like really trying to encourage him to just not show up, like basically sign off on it, but then not show up. And then, like, you know, there's that bit. I love how they play it, where it's like at first, you know, literally the second that he sees physical contact happen, like he's ready to blow that whistle. But then Josie steps in with the you know, the lie, and that kind of escalates everything from there. But I love how after that moment he goes from like, oh hell no, I'm shutting this down, to like, okay, I am all in. I am emotionally invested in these girls. I feel like I want these girls to like be emotionally invested in me and what I'm going through. Like he basically starts to use it as his own personal support group.
Yeah, no, I think part of it is that like it's like when the girls approach him, he's like reading a magazine. And it's like kind of like a Playboy, but it's just because I think it has a.
It's basically like a generic Playboy.
Yeah, or a hustler like that. No, and I think what makes it so endearing for Mr. G to kind of be invested is because outside of Isabel and Brittany, all the other girls are kind of like average to like loserish girls. So I think for him, like it's kind of like he's a bit of like a mother hen.
Totally, yeah.
And and I love the fact that that these girls are getting bonded, and it just gets to a point.
But also just the fact that he flip flops between being an ally and a woman hater just so flippantly.
Oh man, when we get to when we get to, I want to bring up the one line later on in this, but I really love how like as they get closer, you know, like both PJ and Josie are like more confident, and then just there's like the one dramatic scene that I think is like generally kind of traumatic for one of her characters, like when Hazel comes in and like sees her mom's having an affair with like Jeff. And
I mean, even that's like Jeff literally asks for a snack in that scene.
I kind of love that, like it's dramatic, but really, but even then there is still kind of a bit of humor to it because like,
shut up, nerd! I fucked your mom.
And it's kind of like it kind of what's cool about it is at the beginning I think there was like a Chekhov's gun that's established because I remember like
there's a couple Chekhov's guns. I feel like the pineapple is definitely a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like wasn't the fight at the beginning of the movie between Isabel and Jeff about like Jeff hooking up with someone older.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, oh, like Jeff's into like MILFs and all that stuff. And then
you know what the sick thing is though, is that I feel like Jeff literally just wants a mother figure, and he doesn't even like. I almost kind of feel like he's borderline oblivious to the sexual nature of it.
See, my thinking is because considering I think the actors who are playing the football players, I think some of them are gay, and so when thinking of how they act and perform, I feel like.
Well, I mean, look at the scene where they're like egging the house, and he's literally like, I'm not saying straight dudes can't dance to show tunes. I'm a straight dude, and I like show tunes, but but still, that I feel like there's definitely some coding there in what he's doing with the headphones.
Yeah, well, also think of how kind of like in like for certain gay men, there's like, oh, here's the one woman that they like stand for, and
totally, right.
So that and but it definitely kind of feels like I think the whole idea of like a football player sleeping with like the girlfriend's mom is definitely like a weirdly prominent trope in like teen stories.
It is.
I also feel like this must have been a thing on Glee or like a Ryan Murphy show. Yeah, and then when PJ and Josie figure out about it, like they decide to like kind of do basically a riff on like Project Mayhem from Fight Club, and it's like, oh, we're gonna build a bomb. It's like, oh no, they're going to actually just throw eggs and throw paper towels. And I love how like, oh, there were like there's a slow-mo of them just throwing the eggs, they feel triumphant, and it's like and it's just only like Jeff lives in a big ass house. They're only just hitting like a part of it.
Right, like they're trying to throw the toilet paper on the pine tree, but it's just not wrapping around at all because of the shape of the tree.
Yeah, and Hazel, meanwhile, is building an actual bomb in the car, and I
love how Hazel does seem like the most grounded one, but she is the bomb person at the same time. I love the juxtaposition of that.
Yeah, and then they like, and I just love they get into the van and just drive out, and the car explodes. And I think Jeff doesn't even realize that the car exploded. I think a few seconds elapsed, and he looks around and sees like everything is destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really was appreciative of is that, you know, at that night it's like, oh, Peach, like Josie and Isabel, like, you know, hook up and all that stuff, and PJ and Brittany don't hook up, and it's like, okay, like this was very much like intentional on the part of, I think, the director and writer, because it's like, oh, like for the two characters, it can't just be that both of them make it. And so
I really like this choice. I honestly think that the way that these scenes were edited together it was some of the best directing in the movie, because it's like you really get that kind of like just juxtaposition of, you know, the like the character achieving their goals and then like just the really sad rejection. And it's like, you know, I've definitely been there with the whole like leaning in for the kiss and it not being reciprocated, but the person feels bad about it. It's like they know that you're not trying to like, you know, hook up with them or anything, but it's, you know, it's a really awkward place to be in for both parties, and I really love how well they handled that.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because it's like for the Josie and Isabel scene, it's very much the way it's shot. It's like, oh, this is shot like how, like when two teens, you know, who are into each other, like quote unquote consummate or like start to like have sex. It's very like lightly shot. There's kind of like an intimacy about it. And then for PJ and Brittany, I think what kind of led me to like, oh, they're gonna hook up. It's like the way that they banter, and I was like, oh man, if I was in PJ's place, I would totally feel like we're flirty because
right. That's
like,
the thing. That's it's like the way, like, you get it.
The way the body's positioned, and it's like you're touching the wrist and hand stuff. It's like, oh, this is kind of very intimate, you know, building a tension. It's like, and then the kiss, and it's like, ooh, and it's like, oh, I'm straight. It's just like, oh man, I think that's like, even though PJ is definitely a problematic and not an angel by any means. I think those were.
No, you do feel for her. I want to make that clear. She is absolutely, like, in spite of the fact that she's a problematic character, there is some sympathy to be had with her for sure.
But because of that, I think once PJ and Josie like see each other at like the pep rally, like you can definitely feel like in Rachel Snotz's performance, like there is a level of like anger that's towards Josie, even though it's unjustified. Just like the way she finds out, like, oh, Josie eventually got to hook up, and it's like, oh, like PJ's like, oh, that's cool, and you can just feel that, like, in her mind, she's definitely feels like the lesser of the two friends, and
I've also been in that position before. I am honestly someone where it's like I'm. Like, whenever one of my friends gets into a relationship, it's like, it's not like I don't feel happy for them, because I do. It's not like I want my friends to be alone. But at the same time, I definitely run through like, well, shit, now they're going to have a lot less time for me. And also, like, this proves that, like, they're a better, you know, it's like I get really self-loathing about it. It's like I've been trying with it, but it is like I will fully admit that is a problematic part of my personality as well. Is like it's hard for me to see people kind of like, you know, in the position I want to be in and kind of like keep a straight, because again, it's like it's a complicated emotion where it's not like you're angry at them, it's more like you're angry at yourself. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, and I think that's I think what I appreciate about that scene is that like it, like, even though, you know, for, you know, each generation as teenagers had their own unique struggles and like technology and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, for Zoomers, like as a teen, you're like one of the things that you're, for better or worse, you're wanting to like hook up, have boyfriends, girlfriends, sex, and all that stuff. And when you don't get it, and someone else does, even if it's someone that like you logically and emotionally would root for and care for, and it's like, okay, people like it's this person, you can't help but feel like a tinge of jealousy and resentment, all because it's like there is that unfortunate human quality where it's not enough to just kind of like seek out your sense of happiness for yourself. It's like happiness in relation to other people is where we get in trouble as human beings. So that's definitely something that I think Emma was able to key on, and that's essentially kind of a dynamic that's ever present, in like human life. But I think it's even more amplified as like a teenager, especially for teenagers in like the Gen Z group that have like social media.
Oh my God, Rohit, let me tell you, like, I am so glad I grew up with fucking MySpace, right? Like when I was in high school, like people were just starting to transition from MySpace to Facebook. Like that was like my high school social media experience. I am so fucking glad I didn't go to high school with the current social media landscape, man.
Yeah, and this is just guys, right? I like just imagine being a
right.
And
I mean, honestly, that's one of the reasons where it's like if they announced a Mean Girls remake, I honestly wouldn't be opposed to it because I would be curious to see how that story would be tackled in a social media landscape. Like, what kind of damage could Regina George do as a character with modern day social media? You know what I mean?
See, I feel like if Regina was able to do the stuff that she would do, maybe on a bigger level with like current social media, I feel like it would not be as fun to see the fallout.
I guess you're kind of right. I don't know. I'm just saying that's one of the movies where it's like I wouldn't be opposed to a remake. I wouldn't be stoked about it, but I think there's stuff you could do with it.
True, but I think because like the way in which like social dynamics work in terms of spreading rumors and gossip, Mean Girls came out 2004, but it was written and directed like just 2003. Like internet was kind of its infancy. Like even when like people are kind of backstabbing all that, it is kind of like there's sort of an entertainment value. It's like people are just spreading malicious rumors and or people are just kind of reacting and just it's kind of the tit for tat. But the thing is with modern social media and with our kind of crippling awareness of the extent of how that constant social media attention and engagement can negatively impact like teens' mental health. I feel like if you were to see that play out, it probably wouldn't be as much fun because it's like
you're probably right.
Yeah, because instead of just like people just like shouting and like kind of fighting each other in the hallway,
it'd just be a lot of fucking like cyberbullying and passive aggression.
Yeah.
right. I feel you. I feel you.
Through and just get multiple tags. Like I think like the movie. Like, have you seen the movie The Duff or heard of it with like
The Dove?
The Duff.
I've heard of it. I have not seen it.
Yeah, there's like a scene where like a character's like kind of, she's like miming making out with a mannequin, and someone takes it through the internet.
I actually think I have a friend from filmmaking school who worked on that movie, like as a production assistant or something.
Yeah, and like for that video that gets viral, it gets to the point where it's like, the school wants to clamp down, has everyone turn their phones in, and all the students like hate on the girl who was bullied, not the person who's bullying.
Right. Well, I mean, I have a very personal, like, I don't want to get into details, but I have a very personal experience in middle school where I was being bullied, and the school, instead of doing anything about it, basically treated me as the problem, and that's kind of the root of a lot of the social anxiety and self-esteem issues I have today. Fun, anyways.
No, and man, and this is kind of, unfortunately, this is kind of a good segue into the pep rally, where it's like, this is kind of a regular pep rally, and the football players just call out, like, we want to highlight.
I love the joke of like the cheerleading routine is literally just the wet T-shirt. Like that's the extent of it.
Or like the one of the self-defense club is like she's a model, but she just stands in front of cars and like skips.
Right. Oh God. Yeah.
Like,
honestly, I kind of had more sympathy for her than a lot of other, just because it's like it is very clear that she is being like intensely taken advantage of on a daily basis for her looks. Like she is not in a good spot in life, and you don't really ever learn much about her.
Yeah, and I mean she's basically like a sexy leg, like no
right.
And I think for the football, the one football player like Jeff's friend, he comes out and it's like, oh, let's just give. Oh, we heard so much of this like self defense club empowering women, and then Hazel's like brought out, and her opponent being this like barely like he's like basically an ape in a cage. And I'm just like, oh man.
You know what though? I think it's a genuinely good fight scene, and I do think it's impressive that they showed that Hazel, like realistically, she was never gonna win that fight, but she held her own in a pretty realistic way.
Yeah, it wasn't through brute strength though, and that was what I appreciate. Is like it was just kind of her being like a little bit shifty and kind of using like.
Also, can we talk about like this character who's in the cage? Is he the same character who's in the cage in the background of the classroom scenes? Is that supposed to be the same guy? Do you know?
Oh, I think so. I have to rewatch it
because that was one of the details that to me was kind of like my version of your banner scene, where it's like when I saw just the random football player character just in the fucking cage in the middle of the classroom, no explanation whatsoever, I was just like, oh, this is glorious. I love this.
Mm-hmm. And what I really appreciate about the fight was like the sound editing was on point. Like I could feel every punch.
Oh, I feel like just in general for this movie, you can say that.
Yeah. Just seeing how Hazel looked at the end of the fight was just like, oh my god. I was expecting just like an ambulance to come in and just take her out, but she was just laying there on the floor. It's like, my god, it's a very heightened world. It's like, God, Hazel is not having much fun in the middle of the end of the movie. And I really appreciate that the other girls just kind of like turned their backs on PJ and Josie because it really felt like, oh man, like it was an idea to get.
It's a liar reveal, but I think it's a justified liar reveal.
Yeah, no, and I think for PJ and Josie, it's like their argument after that whole debacle blew up in their face was just very, very realistic and very realistic. Oh, this is like two friends that have building resentments that just go for the throat.
Oh.
And I think I'm trying to remember Josie specifically said that was really like, oh, that's hitting deep. The fact that Josie made it to PJ's you're just worried that you're just gonna be alone or something like that, or that nobody would ever want you. It's like, ooh, that's
right, yeah.
And PJ's she says very little. It's like I think I don't know what she says, but she was very curt in response and just walks out, and it's like, ooh, man, there's a fight that really put a dent in her friendship. That's definitely one of those fights.
Totally. All right, so then we get a montage set to fucking Avril Lavigne's "Complicated," which I love the song choice.
Oh man,
to me, I feel like that's one of the big things in this movie that really goes out of its way to call back to the 2000s.
Yeah. I love Josie's just kicking the can down the road.
Right.
Oh, and I think I love when Josie comes to visit an older gay friend, Rhodes.
It was her old nanny, I think.
babysitter. Yeah,
babysitter. Yeah.
and she's played by Punky Johnson, who's currently on SNL, and just the way that like she's interacting with Josie is just really funny.
She's another character. It's like she has like maybe 5 minutes of screen time, but I mean she's got some really big laughs.
Mm-hmm. And I love how like this movie, like football is kind of like the football teams are basically like sociopathic gangs. Especially the rival football team, the Huntington High. Like they have this history of like always killing off one player for every game that they had with the Rockbridge team, and it's just like like in the real world, this would be like a bit of a crime drama, but this is like, oh, this is kind of like the football teams are kind of like warning tribes, or just kind of
exactly,
which makes the school, like the Rockbridge team, the Vikings, really apt.
Which transitions into the third act, and honestly, I think we should just kind of get right into the big spoiler of it all.
Oh, like the fact that the girls kill the Huntington football
Literally, the girls murder the entire football team. And just the fact that, like, I don't know, this ending of the movie is just iconic. Just the fact that, like, first of all, like I said, I do love the pineapple kind of Chekhov's gun. You know, it's like as soon as we see that Jeff has a pineapple allergy and how dramatically they react to it, in the back of my head, I was like, okay, that's got to come into play somehow. And so they do that. They have the whole pineapple setup, which is great. And then just the fight scene itself, which is incredibly well choreographed. I mean, honestly, it kind of felt like something out of like Guardians of the Galaxy or something. Just, you know, like how it's like every character is kind of like getting in on the action, and they all kind of have their own beats. And then just the best part of it is, like, first of all, I love how it's like this whole action scene is playing out. There's like full-on carnage happening. Mm-hmm. And for the entire time, the director is smart to not cut to the audience in the stands at all until after it's all done. And then it like reminds you, like, oh yeah, there's a whole crowd of people watching this shit go down. And then the fact that it's just utterly and completely celebrated as like a huge triumphant victory. Like, there's a version of this movie where that ending is super fucking dark.
It's like, oh, it's like a school shooting, but
right, exactly.
Yeah, like, no, I and I think just the way that the violence is done is like, it's kind of there could have been a version of the scene where it's like almost kind of like Sam Peckinpah, really like brutal to the point violence, but this just kind of like violence you see not in a Tarantino movie, but like in a Matthew Vaughn movie, but just amped up to 11 with a level of like comedy in it.
So yeah, the announcer guy in the game is fucking awesome.
Oh God, I'm trying to think of any like lines that just really stood out. I think just the way
the way that he's celebrating, like, yeah, all those motherfuckers are dead. Yeah. They suck at football and they're fucking dead.
Oh, I love the part where like to get like the audience's attention, that like PJ and Hazel make out, and just like the guys are just, and all the men are just paying attention, or like really most of the crowd is just paying attention.
Like, that's not how they do it in porn. Is porn real?
Yeah.
I love how they portray Jeff as like borderline just straight up incompetent. Like, the dude straight up can't read. He basically needs his whole football squad there to help him with like everything. Like, I would like to think that they even like feed him his lunch and shit like that.
No, they're kind of like, they are kind of like almost petulant man children.
Right.
I think it's interesting that his allergies to pineapple, because isn't like, you know, I mean, this is a spoiler cast for rated movies. I hope I don't sound too vulgar in mentioning this, but Like the thing about like, oh, if you have pineapple, your output, for lack of a better term, has a certain taste to it. I don't know if I want to. Do you get what I mean, Tiki?
I'm sorry, no.
So pineapple, for men that consume enough of it, your semen, it has a certain, like, the taste of the semen.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I wonder if Jeff being specifically allergic to pineapple was hitting upon that.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Ooh, all right. Well, I think that's about it.
Well, the ending with like the emo kid's bomb going off and the tree, like, was it falling down or just explodes?
It just explodes, and it was Hazel's bomb, and the emo kid is like, "Oh, come on, that was my idea."
Yeah.
Again, I love how the emo kid basically has just 3 beats in the whole thing. He has the whole like the Holocaust didn't happen joke. He has, they throw the fruit cup at him, and he's like, "That's it. I wasn't gonna do it, but now I'm gonna do it." Yeah. Which I love how that is like the most like fucking tongue-in-cheek motivation for a school shooting plotline ever. I almost kind of feel like that specific moment is like making fun of 13 Reasons Why.
Oh man.
And then he pops up right at the very end. It's like, again, that's the thing with these characters. It's like that character probably has like a singular minute of screen time, probably less than that, but he's still memorable.
Did you watch the bloopers?
Yes, of course I stayed for the bloopers. Okay. They were wonderful.
My favorite blooper is like when Rachel Sonata and IU degree, they're talking to Marshawn Lynch, and it's like, oh, like they're trying to convince her to be the advisor. And it's like, oh, I'm just dealing with the big D, and it's like divorce, death, like he's nuts, and it's like I was like, oh god. I wish that was in the movie.
I honestly feel like this movie is almost destined to have an X-rated director's cut, and I really hope it does.
I bet you that like once I wish I got to rewatch the movie again, because I think like for me, it's just hard to remember certain scenes because there's so much to happen. It was like a while since I've seen the movie, so
that's fair. It's like I just got back from it.
Yeah, no, I like if whenever it comes out on streaming, I'll definitely rewatch it. Like a few times, multiple times, just so, because I honestly think once this movie is available, what's out of theaters and like DVD and like digital streaming, I bet you that this movie becomes like a lot of quotes for this movie will be common quotes among
this is going to be a cult classic, and absolutely I agree with you on the quote thing. And honestly, it's been a while since we've had a comedy that really delivers the pop culture quotes. So I'm legitimately kind of like excited for that on a cultural level.
Yeah, and I think part of it is just that we haven't had like a lot of like outright comedy movies in the past few years that's like very dialogue driven.
Well, yeah, true. And I feel like people have just been kind of like afraid to toe the line and, deliver material that's truly offensive.
Yeah.
But I want to double back around to a comment I saw from Kogias. Says, I feel like the anti-woke crowd would hate this movie because of how much they hate things that are all gay with gay characters. Honestly, though, I really feel like this movie, it's got gay characters in it for sure, and maybe the anti-woke crowd isn't going to like that.
Yeah.
But I really hope that. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to endorse the anti-woke crowd. I legitimately don't care if they like this movie or not.
Sure.
But I feel like. I feel like people should be celebrating this movie specifically. Like, I don't want to call this movie itself anti-woke because it's not. It's got a lot of modern sensibilities to it and some good messages behind it. But I feel like it's the first comedy in a long time that's been willing to just unapologetically go there. And unlike something like Joyride, where Joyride was frankly like, honestly, I feel like as far as like the actual like sexual material of Joyride, that movie really like pushed it for me almost too far. Mm-hmm. But I don't really feel like it had the like it didn't really back it up, honestly. I feel like that movie was basically like really over the top set pieces and then like an okay story. And this is just like the whole movie is over the top. The story is very solid, but honestly, the story doesn't really matter all that much because like this story literally ends with a fucking whole group of football players getting fucking massacred. And
because
prevent that celebratory about it. It's like the story in this movie really doesn't matter all that much. It's very much about the vibe and the journey and the quotes.
It's very much like I feel like if you were to tell the premise of this like film, it's like, oh, this would have maybe like been like an Adult Swim cartoon, like back in the day. But I do appreciate that like it's a live action film that is very heightened, and all the actors are very keyed in. There's never like one character that's like, oh, this character is just not like clued in or keyed into like the world of the film.
Totally.
And I do what I think we're getting at Tiki with regards to like the like how far this film goes. It's edgy, but it's edgy with a point.
And absolutely.
And I think where you're getting at is that like it has modern sensibilities. It has like a certain feminist like perspective, but it isn't sort of like.
Again, I really feel like it's in the same kind of camp as Barbie when it comes to just being like a satire on both the good and bad qualities of feminism.
No, and I think like if Barbie is like, oh, this is like for your teenage daughter or teenage cousin. Bottoms is like this is for your older cousin or like your parent that like was a teenager.
Totally.
Yeah, and it's just like it's very much like, oh, here's like the mainstream blockbuster perspective of
I honestly feel like this movie was specifically made for lesbians who grew up with Mean Girls.
Well, did you? So actually, I'm curious. Did you caught the Easter egg with the name of the diner?
Oh God, it was a joke, right? I forget what it was. It was
the diner is like, but I'm a diner. To the lesbian movie, but I'm just a cheerleader. But I'm a cheerleader with Natasha Lyonne, who plays a cheerleader.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that part of it. I just kind of thought it was a funny name for a diner.
But that's what it was referencing, and it's like, man, this like movie. Yeah, I think like considering sort of like, sort of like I think for the like, there's basically two out and open lesbians as the main leads. And I think the way that they just go about their sexuality, they just feel like real people that just happen to be, gay. And I think this movie works because then it's not like, oh, we're focusing. It's not like, oh, this is a teen movie about these two characters coming out and trying to deal with them being like openly gay in like a very small conservative town. It's like, no, these are just characters that are awkward and gay. And I love like the beginning of the movie is like, or like or some part of the movie, it's like, oh man, it used to be tough. Oh, you would back in the day, if people didn't like you, you would stick to ways gay. But it's like no, now it's like it's not just you're gay, you're also untalented. It's like
right, exactly. All right. Any final thoughts, Rohit?
I guess whoever's been the SpoilerCast, I feel like even if you know them, even if you've been spoiled by them, even if you paying attention, know the plot details, I think just the way to see those things executed should warrant people to watch this movie in theaters and or watch this on digital streaming. This movie has just really great writing, great direction. It has a group of really solid actors with standout performances from Rachel Sanan, Ayi Dabiri, and like a really great, just ensemble. Marshawn Lynch is just a standout. I think this is a movie that when you watch a few times, you I feel like you'll eventually just kind of like become one with the movie. If that makes sense. That this world, this like
I mean, I already kind of feel that after 2 viewings, honestly.
yeah, and so
Like I said, the runtime just fucking flew by.
yeah, I think like with how modern and how kind of like out there and absurd this movie is, I feel like this is a movie that maybe not everyone can enjoy, but I think there's going to be like interesting audiences, interesting types of audience people that would be into this movie. Like it get like not only would I think like humor girls be into it, I think certain guys.
I honestly kind of feel like it would be a good litmus test for like if I show a person this movie and they don't like it, I'm like, oh, okay, like you're still probably a cool person, but maybe we might not vibe. You know what I mean?
I think it's a good litmus test for sense of humor.
Right.
Because I think like I feel like someone could find Barbie funny, but maybe not find this movie funny, Bonos, because it's like how out there and maybe a little edgy it is. And so that's kind of I think this is sort of like I feel like this movie, it's like this UHF, maybe like Wet Hot American Summer, or any movie that has a really strong sense of absurd humor to it. Oh, like or even the Weird Al like movie with Daniel Radcliffe. Those are movies that's like there's
That's
like
another good example. That feels kind of similar to this. I hear what you're saying about that. Yeah.
a person that like doesn't just enjoy the traditional, not to like try to anyone that likes traditional like comedies or whatever, but this person is like, oh, this is the kind of person that will enjoy most of Adult Swim's catalog and enjoy these type of movies I mentioned before. So
Have you seen Andy Samberg's Pop Star Never Stop Never Stop?
Yes.
Yeah. I've been trying to get Dragon to watch that for years, man. Because I know he's a Sandberg fan. I know he likes the Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So
I usually get him to watch not just Pop Star Never Stopping. Also like Hot Rod. That's
Hot Rod's fucking oh my god, both those movies are fucking genius, dude. And both of those movies are kind of like in that same sort of wheelhouse that we're talking about, where the whole world just feels heightened.
Have you seen Good Boys?
Good Boys. Oh yeah, I didn't. To me, I didn't really care for that one, honestly.
Okay, I think like I just like,
it was okay. Don't get me, but I kind of feel like it was more sort of like I didn't really get a lot out of it. That I like it didn't really stick with me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like I didn't actively dislike it, but nothing about it was very memorable.
No, that makes sense. I think like this movie, if you're really into sort of the like out there humor of Adult Swim, especially like late at night Adult Swim.
I could see Adult Swim legitimately just fucking playing this movie on their channel and it fitting into the programming.
Yeah, if you're into like the Eric Andre show or
totally. This definitely has an Eric Andre vibe to it. Absolutely.
Yeah. No. So yeah, I would highly recommend this movie if you have that kind of sense of humor. I guess for me and Tiki, I guess I feel like we have similar senses of humor for the most part. So I guess like if you agree with our perspectives on what we find funny in certain movies or whatever, then I guess just definitely watch this movie and I think you'll have a good time with it. And what about you, Tiki? What's your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't necessarily think like I feel like movies like, like Barbie, Oppenheimer, Asteroid City, I think objectively they're probably better filmmaking. Like obviously they've got like a lot more going on just as far as like the actual like craft. But this to me is like the movie of 2023. And the year's not over yet. We've still got some interesting stuff coming out. But this to me so far is like probably going to be the movie that I'm going to be like, I can literally see this being like a once every 6 months or so kind of movie for me, like a comfort movie in that way,
I really think this is probably, I feel like Barbie, I think this is one of the best comedies in this year. And even though there's really not been a lot of great comedies out there, I think if like for me, Barbie is still the number one comedy, but it's like Barbie, this, and then Theater Camp. if you're all wanting to watch any good comedies that came out this year, these are the movies.
Theater Camp's really solid as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also really appreciate Theater Camp as like a comeback for Ben Platt.
I appreciate Theater Camp having a really good use for Jimmy Tatro of all people.
That's the guy who played the son, right?
Yes.
Okay, the funny thing about that is like the whole movie I was struggling like where the fuck do I know this guy from? I know this guy from somewhere. Then I looked it up like, oh my god, American fucking Vandal, of course.
Not only that, but he was in 22 Jump Street as the
right, yeah.
Yeah.
American Vandal canceled before its time, man. Anyways. All right, well, we should probably wrap this up. Big thanks to Rohith, Lucas Green, and Code Geass. I'm sorry, obviously, thanks to you for being here. But big thanks to Richard's victims, Code Geass and Lucas Green, for joining us in the comments. And Rohith, I just have one small request of you, my friend.
Sure.
Will you come visit me on Sundays? Please come visit me on Sunday.